Hey everybody, and welcome to the Junkyard. Today, I want to talk about the 2014 Giver movie. It has kind of a complicated plot, so let me summarize it here. The Giver is about a strange society where people live in a pleasant, ignorant sameness. They don't have sadness or strife, nor do they have real pleasure, difficult thought, or emotional depth. The protagonist is Jonas, a kid who was assigned the role Receiver of Memory. It is his job to store all the memories from the time before this sameness. In essence, he is the owner of all the world's otherness. He stores that which is human and complicated and difficult, and through him, the rest of society can continue to function in this homogeneous way. And most of the film consists of the former receiver, now called the Giver, transmitting these memories to Jonas. Let me tell you the ending too, because it's pretty important. Jonas learns that babies are systemically murdered when they don't conform to the community's criteria.
Almost done. That wasn't so bad now, was it? That's death.
And because of this, he decides to leave town with an infant he's grown attached to and who would be killed otherwise, Gabriel. And when he leaves, the world will once again have the memories that have been locked away for so long.
If you did cross this boundary, and if the memories were set free, all of the pain that you felt, all the confusion, the chaos, it would all return.
The Giver is based on a children's book of the same name by Lois Lowry, and if you haven't read it, I'd highly recommend that you do. It is devastatingly beautiful. I read it many times as a child, and when I read it again for the sake of this video, I was blown away by just how much it held up, how well it is written, how rich and thoughtful it is. The movie, on the other hand, is an absolute shit show from minute one to minute done. Truly, it's a kind of gift to be able to transform material this good into such a dull, garbo movie. So, as I suggested in my last video, we're now going to be entering the hog zone and breaking down this absolute hog of a movie. Oink oink. Let's get into it with a fun numbered list. Point 1.
Hog! Hog!
I want to begin here by discussing a line in the movie that kinda says it all, establishes problems that we're going to be seeing in different forms over the course of this video. Let me set the stage. Jonas is sitting with the Giver on his first day of training, and the Giver starts by transmitting the memory of sledding. After seeing how wonderful it is, Jonas asks why society at large no longer has this memory, and the Giver says this.
There is no snow because of climate control.
But why don't people know about them? I mean, what's so dangerous about the memory of a sled?
What's so dangerous? For a sled, you need snow. Snow is cold. Cold destroys crops, which meant farmers couldn't farm. Unpredictable weather.
So, while this is kind of a small, trivial moment, this line is what made me want to make this video in the first place, because it is broken on every level. To start off, in a very subtle way, it telegraphs to the audience that everything in this movie is going to be pat, overdetermined, almost patronizing in its delivery. Why is there no memory of sledding anymore? Well, here's why. Here's your concrete, dull explanation. We got rid of snow because it was bad for farmers, so that's why people can't know about sledding. But this is just very silly, isn't it? Are we to believe that every memory that has been taken away from this community has a concrete reason for not being there anymore? That we could provide a pragmatic account of why there is no color, no music, no memory of animals?
This is a mythical creature called a hippo.
No, of course not. What would that even mean? See, The Giver, the original book, is a surprisingly abstract story. It is hard to pin down. Why is the memory of sledding gone from this world? Well, that question is never raised, and that's for good reason. It has no exact answer. All we have is the general sense that the memory of sledding is fun and joyful and essentially human, and that this society, in its quest for perfection, has rid itself of real humanity. Any explanation that tries to be more precise than that misses the entire point. And the thing is, This added line here, it doesn't even make sense. Why would this society decide that people shouldn't remember about sledding just because there is no snow now? People know about stuff that isn't around anymore all the time. Dinosaurs used to roam the earth. People used to ride horses and buggies everywhere. Does my knowledge of these things somehow make society less stable? Not really, right? So the giver just saying sledding requires snow, which is bad for crops, doesn't actually give us clarity as to why people wanted the memory gone. Doesn't add up. So I have to wonder then why they even bothered with this. Although it's obviously not an important line, it is excessive, unnecessary gibberish that undermines the story. And we are going to be seeing a lot of that today. Point 2. So, as any real fan of The Giver could tell you, the book is not perfect. In fact, it has one major and pretty obvious flaw, and it's frankly shocking that Lois Lowry didn't catch it in time for publication. Put simply, Jonas never has sex. He never even gets a sweet kiss from a sexy lady. What were they thinking? To be honest, that's one thing I was pretty excited for in the movie. They correctly aged Jonas up from 12 to 16 and cast him as a sexy 25-year-old adult man. And they elevated the role of Fiona to romantic lead, giving the movie some much-needed erotic appeal. No, I'm just pranking you. That last moment of the video has been an elaborate prank, and you all fell for it. The choice to include a romantic plotline in the film is, I'd argue, on its face terrible. The inclusion nakedly exists for no other purpose besides to make the film feel more standard, more faux mature, more 2014 dystopian young adult. And the most charitable possible read of it is that it adds nothing to the film and simply wastes our time. But it is worse than that. Let's talk about two hot romantic scenes between Jonas and Fiona. In the first, Jonas has just begun his receiver training, learned about sledding, and he wants to share that with Fiona. What follows is a scene that feels a lot like Aang taking Katara penguin sledding in Avatar. It also looks like sledding in Omashu, come to think of it. Point being that Avatar inexplicably has a lot of sledding scenes. At any rate, the vibes are clear. Jonas is teaching Fiona about fun, and she's responsive. She is having fun in a way she didn't know she could. The next scene I want to talk about is similar. Jonas has recently told Fiona to stop taking her injections.
Tomorrow morning, skip your injection.
What, you quit?
Prick your finger and put a little blood on this apple.
These injections curb sexual impulses, and so when she agrees to do as Jonas says, she runs up to him and gives him a big angry kiss. Fiona not taking her injections anymore is important, because this is what causes her choice to defect from her society. When it's decided that a child, Gabriel, will be murdered because of small behavioral issues, Jonas asks her to help him save his life, and she, with eyes now opened, now truly aware of this society's evil, does as he asks. So, looking at these moments, sure, we could start off by saying that they are very cringy, sentimental in a way that feels completely unearned. Fiona and Jonas riding down the slope could feel liberating and whimsical, but the sappy music just makes it feel joyless to me. Like I'm supposed to be so moved by this powerful moment when nothing moving is actually happening. And the scene where Fiona kisses Jonas is just terribly stilted and overwritten. I have no better way to describe it.
What do you feel?
I don't know. I don't have the words to describe it.
Warm? Does it feel warm?
Warm?
Does it feel nice?
But more importantly, the arc of this romantic relationship works to undermine the overarching plot, to confuse the stakes of our conflict. I don't want to re-synopsize this movie, but The Giver is about the role of memory and experience and emotion and wisdom, right? Jonas is given these things so the rest of his world does not have access to them. That's like the whole thing, why he exists, why he has to leave town to give people their memories back. And yet here, the movie's just like, See, if Fiona can start to fight against this dystopia because she had fun sledding, because she stopped taking her horny injections, then I guess she didn't really need the memories. So suddenly, Jonas has no real reason to give people their memories back. He just needs to have a fun day with them, get them off their medication. They'll be fine. It goes without saying, the book does not fall into this trap. No, part of the point there is that however nice Fiona is, it doesn't mean anything. She still lives this empty, vapid life, still would murder a child because that's what she's supposed to do. Quote, Fiona is already being trained in the fine art of release, the giver told him. She's very efficient at her work, your red-haired friend. Feelings are not part of the life she's learned. Fiona's plot in the movie shows a desire to flesh out her character. She's a real lady now. She's a person. She gives Jonas a little kiss and she can be convinced to not kill an infant. But the result of that choice is that Jonas and the Giver are an incidental part of their own story. The knowledge they hold, the nature of their memory, the pain and beauty they experience plays a second fiddle to some fucking injections. It's tragic, honestly. Point 3. I'm just gonna show you a horrible interaction that happens in this movie.
Do you lie?
Oh, all the time. Mostly for personal amusement. But I won't lie to you.
How do I know that's not a lie? There was some...
You know, there's a lot of bad acting in this film, I won't deny that, but this is something else. It almost feels like the Giver thinks Jonas is gonna say something after he pretends to laugh at his little observation, but then Jonas is just like so pumped up that he got a laugh that he's just swimming in the wind. This is my recreation of Jeff Bridges' performance in this scene. I hope you enjoy. Point 4. So, The Giver 2014 has voiceover, quite a lot of it actually, and I find its role in the movie pretty baffling, but also quite awful. The Giver is presented to us in retrospect by a Jonas who has already received memories and who understands the nature of his world.
After the ruin, we started over, creating a new society, one of true equality. Rules were the building blocks of that equality. We learned them as new children. Rules like use precise language, wear your assigned clothing.
Also, the narrative is framed as a confessional. Jonas is going to give us information about what he did so we can judge him, come to a conclusion as to whether he was right or wrong.
I'm asked if I should apologize for what I did. I'll let you decide.
And in the end, Jonas decides he did a good thing. Come on. And in the end, Jonas decides he did a good thing by giving people memory back.
They were the truth. The elders and their rules were the lie. So I do not apologize.
So this narrative device doesn't accomplish much as far as I'm concerned. No crucial information is established this way, it doesn't help the story progress, and for the most part, it is very poorly written. The opening voiceover feels like it's copying the Lego Movie or something. It's so on the nose. And, you know, it's just dumb that the film has to end with some trite thing about how Jonas doesn't feel bad. Like, there could be a thoughtful moment here. We could see with our own eyes that Jonas is happy. He doesn't need to tell me about it.
I knew Fiona was safe, that I'd see her again, and that I held the future there in my arms.
See, there's a reason so many novel adaptations have voiceovers, and it's because books are written. Characters have thoughts and opinions, and it's innately difficult to transfer those things into the visual, non-text narrative of filmmaking. And at times, when the author writes an important passage, it's just better to say that directly in the movie. But the novel The Giver just isn't written like this. It occurs mostly in conversation and action, and doesn't spend much time at all lingering in Jonas's opinions and inner world. I'd argue it's a very cinematic novel. And so hearing these voiceovers is just odd. It feels like the Giver movie wants to look like a novel, wants to have a character tell us a bunch of expositional things about his world and express his thoughts in a quote-unquote literary way. And so, without source material that has that stuff, it kinda just adds in these voiceovers and useless retrospective framing device. In other words, in order to adapt a book, the movie invents material, includes poorly written passages to make it feel more like a book, which, I'll remind you, it already was. How odd is that? Point 5.
It's hog time, buckaroo.
Okay, let me play you one of the most ridiculous lines in all of cinema. Jonas has just run away, and there's an announcement that he's permanently gone. The town then congregates and begins their ritual, where they chant Jonas's name again and again, starting off loud, then getting progressively softer over the course of the day, and eventually going silent and never mentioning Jonas again. This is all fine so far. It's in the book, and it's a nice way of getting at this society's aversion to memory, their desperate need to always move on in the eternal, banal presentness of their lives. But now, I'll show you the clip I'm interested in. It's of Jonas's family.
How do they know Jonas is gone?
We must not say his name anymore.
I will.
So what happens there is that Lily mentions Jonas and her mom tells her, "You must not say this name anymore." And she does this while a crowd of people, including herself, are at that moment chanting his name over and over again. So you might be mad at me right now, shouting that this is just a nitpick, a cinema sin. And honestly, if we're being real, I'm bringing this scene up partly because I'm so tired of that attitude concerning these kinds of things. After Cinema Sins and other dull YouTube channels, it feels like there's been a pervasive cultural backlash, claiming that focusing on minor details is usually a waste of time. We should instead pay attention to bigger things, a movie's overarching plot, its characters, etc. And I want to say right here, right now, that I disagree somewhat. Of course, not all plot holes are ruinous for a movie, but sometimes they really do matter, and this is one such case. Everyone in this room is chanting Jonas, Jonas, Jonas. They are doing that as a part of a ritual that can make the movie feel more vibrant or rich or complicated. But the movie is so deeply lazy that it doesn't even pay attention to the basic things that are going on in it, to what these characters are doing and why. And because of that lack of attention, they allow a character to say a line that doesn't make sense in a really obvious way. It's just an iconic, deeply embarrassing bit of filmmaking, and yes, it matters to me. Point 6. On the subject of stupid little things that bother me to no end, the way the Giver transmits memories to Jonas is just very funny sometimes. And what I mean by that specifically is that in their sessions, the Giver gives Jonas memories of Nelson Mandela and the Berlin Wall and Tiananmen Square. I don't know why this made me laugh so much, but it fucking destroyed me. For one thing, the memories in the book are these general, abstract things. War or sledding or family. Just vibes-based memories. Not, stock TV footage of important historical events. Did the Giver transmit the memory of Shrek as well? Did he transmit the memory of Shrek Forever After? Did Jonas learn about Shrek in his receiver training? Also, I just find the idea that the Giver takes place in our world so ridiculous. 1991, the Berlin Wall falls down. 2500, the Giver is tasked to store all of human memory. Very odd indeed. Point 7. This is going to be the longest part of this video. Let's talk about agency in The Giver 2014. Because in a lot of ways, agency defines this movie. It is the main thing that separates it from its source material. For example, we have the Chief Elder, played shockingly by Meryl Streep.
But I must warn you, your training involves pain. Pain.
She is the main antagonist of the movie and acts directly against the Giver and Jonas in their attempt to restore memory to the community. This is an invented role, created from whole cloth. In the book, the elders are nobodies. They aren't so much as described or named. They don't make relevant choices, don't prevent anyone from doing anything, and don't have opinions. In some way, Meryl Streep exists then to have agency, exert power in the text. Or look at Asher. In the book, this kid was just Jonas's friend. His main role was to get at the strange ableism and discipline of this society, but he doesn't do anything. He's entirely irrelevant to the arc of Jonas's plot. Now, in the movie, he's like a weirdo freak man. Unlike Jonas or his GF Fiona, Asher is really invested in maintaining conformity.
It's against the rules, Jonas.
But then, at the end, he sides with Jonas and lets him live. Now, he has an arc. Now, he has agency. Or look at Jonas's mother. In the book, she was also nobody, just a pleasant lady who works as a judge. Now, in the movie, she's an other antagonist. She's constantly irritated with Jonas and her daughter, barking that they use more precise language in the most annoying way possible.
Precision of language.
In the end, she sides with Meryl Streep, reports on Jonas's activities, and kinda tries to get him killed. And then, of course, we have Fiona, but we already talked about her, so I won't get into it again. So, yeah, agency is the name of the game, right? Giving characters a lot of choices is the unifying feature of this entire movie, so let's talk about it. For one thing, I just think this is boring and kinda makes the movie feel like trash. And I think my own emotions are important. So often, when we look at stories, we conceptualize agency as something we should strive for. Characters shouldn't just be sitting there, not doing much, right? They should have opinions, do things, decide on stuff, be meaningful to the plot. Otherwise, why have them at all? But no, I don't really agree with that strawman writing tip I just said. Because giving a character more choices is only good when it does something good, and that isn't the case here. Jonas's mom isn't interesting, Asher isn't cool, I don't care about Meryl Streep's character at all. These people aren't deeper than they were in the original novel, they're not meaningfully developed, they just do more shit than they did before. Cool, I guess. Besides, from a writing perspective, it just makes the material feel so fake. You know, people don't generally have a big role to play in their societies. They just hang out, do whatever, right? And the reality of that is reflected in the book, where characters just chill out and live their monotonous little lives. They feel real, vivid, appropriately small. Now, in the movie, everyone is up to something all the time. They're getting in planes and shouting at kids and making moves. They're all organized in the plot, directed either to destroy or maintain this society, and it can't help but feel fake to me, feel contrived. But perhaps more important than my issue with craft, I think the inclusion of so much agency into this story works against the basic themes of its plot. The community of the Giver is a dystopia. It is an authoritarian ethno-state. But the central mechanic through which it operates is not malice or power-seeking. Rather, it is an evil of banality, emptiness. I feel like I keep saying this, but that's why the receiver exists, to think and choose in ways people can't anymore. And it's for this reason that making everyone in this story have agency defeats the central thesis of the story. Let's look at one subtle but important scene as an example. After learning about love from the Giver, Jonas goes to his home and asks his parents, "Do you love me?" The mother then barks at him, "Jonas, precision of language, please."
Do you love me?
Jonas, precision of language.
She actively wants him to stop this, thinks he is saying something offensive. On some level, she seems aware of what Jonas is doing, and she is upset buy it. And the book is so similar, but so deeply different. There, the father says precision of language, but he's amused by the situation, believes what he's saying, but doesn't care all that much. There was an awkward silence for a moment. Then father gave a little chuckle. "Jonas, you of all people, precision of language, please." "What do you mean?" Jonas asked. Amusement was not at all what he had anticipated. "And that's because the absence of love is not an idea that these people are committed to, not a law to be complicit with and care about. No, it was never a choice in the first place. None of it was. That's the entire point." Point 9.
Hog!
The ending of The Giver 2014 is hard to talk about because it sucks, but in the most boring way humanly possible. In an hour-and-a-half long movie, the last 40 minutes are devoted to a high-pressure action sequence of Jonas leaving the society. This choice is, to me, almost unfathomable. Dystopias are interesting. The material of this society is interesting. What's not interesting is watching this 26-year-old man running in the desert and occasionally telling us poorly written voiceover sequences. To me, it feels almost disdainful, honestly. Like, why does the movie hate its source material so much? Why doesn't it want us to explore this place? Why does it feel that the core story of The Giver is so boring that we need almost half the movie to be devoted to this, of all things? In other words, why make a movie about something you so clearly have no interest in? It's just sad, honestly. Point 10. So we're coming to the end of my video, but I know what you're thinking. Big Joel, you're coming down hard on this movie, but come on. The original Giver wasn't without its flaws. And any real fan can point you to a major one. The Giver never gets laid. We don't know if he ever had sex or even had a little kiss from a sexy lady. What's going on with that? And shockingly enough, The Giver 2014 solves that problem. It's kinda subtle, but I'd say heavily insinuated that The Giver used to be involved in some way with the Chief Elder. It's implied that The Giver used to transfer some of his memories to her, much as Jonas now does to Fiona.
Even I tried to share the memories back when I was in training, if you'll remember.
It seems like she was potentially his wife, since she seems really emotional when he brings up his dead daughter. And at any rate, they obviously have romantic chemistry here, right? Like, clearly something's going on with these two. The thing is, I don't care all that much about this choice. It's not that awful or heavy-handed, and the scenes where Jeff Bridges plays against Meryl Streep are probably the best in the film. Just look at how hard Meryl's working here.
If you could only see the possibility of love. Of love. With love comes faith, with comes hope.
Love is just passion that can turn.
But see, my apathy toward this choice is kinda why I wanted to end with it. The Giver 2014 just loves adding shit. What if the first image in the movie is a text screen telling us that from the ashes of the ruin, the communities were built, protected by the boundary? What if there's a secret triangle rock that protects this society? Isn't that mysterious and dumb? What if there's a really concrete reason why this community doesn't have sledding anymore? What if Fiona has a crush on Jonas? What if there was a Chief Elder? What if she hologrammed into rooms like a fucking idiot?
I can't be at every ceremony in person.
Some of the time, these additions are extremely stupid, actively get in the way of the movie being good. Those times are easy to talk about. But what's harder to express is the general nagging sense the entire film gives me. The feeling that none of these elements add up to anything, that this whole movie is utterly pointless. In the absolute best case scenario, you are sitting there watching this film and you notice, oh, I guess the Chief Elder used to have sex with the Giver. And taken alone, maybe that wouldn't be the worst thing, wouldn't make the movie bad. But at this point, you kinda just want to die.